Indonesia and China have signed a number of Memorandum of Understandings, or MOUs, in the economic field to further boost their economic cooperation, which has significantly increased during the past several years.
Indonesian Prabowo Subianto held bilateral meeting with the visiting Premier of the People's Republic of China, Li Qiang, at the Merdeka Palace, Jakarta on Sunday, May 25th, to further strengthen the comprehensive strategic partnership between the two countries, which have shared a long-standing history of friendship. During the Chinese Premier's visit, 4 Memorandums of Understandings, or MOUs, in the economic fields were signed. They, among others, include the agreement between Bank Indonesia and the People's Bank of China on bilateral transactions using local currencies. The cooperation agreements mark a strong commitment from leaders of the two countries to further strengthen their bilateral cooperation to another level. The MOUs followed the signing of business deals worth $10 billion in Beijing in November last year during the visit of President Prabowo Subianto to the country. The deals cover various economic fields such as food, new energy, technology, and biotechnology. The business deals further strengthen Chinese companies' foothold in the Indonesian market. At present, China is one of the main sources of foreign direct investment in Indonesia. In the first quarter of 2025, China was ranked third with investment of $1.8 billion, while in 2024, China's investment in Indonesia reached a total of $8.1 billion, also the third largest. Chinese companies are heavily engaged in mining and metal processing. They include Tsingshan Holding Group, Shijiang Huayu Cobalt, and Jiangsu Delong Nickel Industry Co. The Chinese companies control at least 75% of the nickel processing capacity in the country. The Chinese companies have also dominated electric vehicle industry and EV market in Indonesia. Chinese EV brands such as BYD, Wuling, Chery, and Neda are quite popular in Indonesia and have been dominant in the local market. BYD has become a top-selling EV brand in the country. The car is quite popular due to factors like competitive pricing and technological advancements. Some of them are also building production facilities in Indonesia. Meanwhile, the Chinese mobile phone brands dominate the Indonesian market, holding a significant share of the total smartphone shipments. Chinese brands like Oppo and Vivo have taken the lead, and the top 4 Chinese brands, Oppo, Vivo, Realme, and Xiaomi, collectively control a large portion of the market. E-commerce players from China also have a strong presence in Indonesia. Shopee, Lazada, and TikTok Shop are dominant players in Indonesia. China is also Indonesia's major trading partner, with bilateral trade volume reaching $135.2 billion in 2024 in favor of China. During the year, Indonesia's exports reached $62.4 billion, while imports totaled $72.7 billion. The Indonesian government hopes that their growing presence, the Chinese companies, will also give a greater contribution to the Indonesian economy, either in the forms of taxes or in the opening of jobs for the locals, in addition to transfer of technology. I do hope Chinese investment projects, especially in the processing of nickel ores, will prioritize local workers and help empower the local economy.
China and Indonesia signed a number of agreements in economic fields during the visit of Premier Li Qiang to Indonesia recently. The economic deals further strengthen the rising presence of the Chinese businesses in Indonesia. Here with us today, Muhammad Zulfikar Rahmat, Director of Indonesia-China Desk at CELIOS Research Agency, who will talk about the rising presence of Chinese businesses in its contribution to Indonesia's economy. Hello, Pak Muhammad. Thank you so much for joining Economic Outlook on TVRI World.
Hello, many thanks.
All right, now let's just start with our conversation about China's presence in Indonesia in the economic field. As we know, China has always been Indonesia's biggest trading partner for the past decade at least. But for the past few years, we are seeing Chinese business rising in their presence in almost all economic fields, from mining, downstream industry, to electric vehicles, technology, and of course, infrastructure. Now, there are a few reasons for this, of course, but maybe you can help us understand by outlining what are the main factors that have been luring Chinese companies to increase their presence in Indonesia.
Yes, I think there are two factors. Number one is the push factor, and the second one is the pull factor. When it comes to the push factor, of course, over the past several years, Chinese economy has experienced a number of downturns, and of course, one of the ways in which China is trying to rejuvenate the economy is by investing overseas. And the second push factor is that China has been trying to expand its influence across the world, including in ASEAN. And Indonesia, as the biggest nations in ASEAN, has been their destination for spreading the influence. Meanwhile, when it comes to the pull factors, the first one is, of course, Indonesia's strategic location. It's not only a hub for Southeast Asia, but it also offers access to the broader Asian market. Indonesia is also rich in natural resources like nickel, which is, I think, crucial for industries that are of important to China, like EV or electric vehicle. And then the third reason is that the Indonesian government has also made substantial effort to improve infrastructure and offer incentive to foreign investors, including Chinese companies. And therefore, there is a pull factor from the Indonesian government also inviting Chinese investors to invest in Indonesia.
Okay, interesting. So, in the first place, it's the growth in the China's domestic market itself that has given them resources to invest in other markets, and that is coupled with Indonesia's need to increase their infrastructure and also their manufacturing capabilities that has made Indonesia so much dependent on Chinese businesses for these past few years. But Pak Muhammad, do you think there is a significant impact when it comes to the rising presence of these Chinese companies in terms of providing jobs and also in transfer of technology? Is it as expected?
I think, of course, certainly there are some benefits. Chinese companies have created jobs, particularly in sectors like mining and manufacturing. However, these jobs are often low skill, and there is a concern about the quality of employment. A lot of skilled positions are still being filled by foreign workers, especially from China, rather than creating opportunities for locals to climb the career ladders. And on the tax side, there has been progress, of course, but some companies, especially large Chinese companies, find ways to minimize tax liabilities, which means that Indonesia might not be getting as much as it should from these businesses. And when it comes to technology transfer, where some is happening, it's often more like superficial. Many local companies are not yet benefiting from the high-tech processes that Chinese companies bring, and this gap in knowledge transfer needs to be addressed more effectively by both the government of Indonesia and the Chinese government.
All right, Pak Muhammad, we want to discuss now a specific sector where Chinese companies are quite dominating, and that is the downstream industry, especially in mining, in nickel processing to be exact. Now, do you think Indonesia has received a fair gain from their presence, from the cooperation in this specific field?
In my opinion, I think Indonesia could be getting much more out of this. We have the raw materials, but we are still not processing them to the level we should be. Chinese companies are coming in and doing the heavy lifting, but the question is, are they really benefiting Indonesia's economy in the long run, or are they just extracting resources and sending them off to China or elsewhere? There is a huge opportunity here for Indonesia to develop more downstream industry, but it requires stricter policies that ensure more value is added locally, whether that is through advanced processing or developing a domestic battery industry. Right now, I think we are not seeing enough of that.
All right, one of the biggest criticism for China's nickel processing projects in Indonesia is their employment of large number of Chinese workers. Do you think there should be more regulation in limiting the number of Chinese workers and providing more jobs for locals? What's your take on this, Pak Muhammad?
Absolutely, and I think it's a valid concern. While foreign expertise is important, we need to ensure that Indonesian workers are getting the opportunities to build the skills and move up the career ladder. The government should set clear rules on foreign labor, allowing skilled foreign workers in specific roles, but requiring companies to train local to fill those roles over time. Because what we see on the ground is that often foreign laborers occupy positions that can be filled by local workers, such as drivers, construction workers, and so on and so forth. Otherwise, if we are not able to set a clear regulation, we risk creating a dependency on foreign labor, and that is not sustainable in the in the long run. Indonesia should not be in a position where it depends heavily on foreigners for basic mining operation or processing.
Hi, Pak Muhammad. We are learning so much already from you. I wish there were more time to ask you more questions because there are other fields where the Chinese companies are dominating. For example, the electric vehicle market. But I have one last question for you in this conversation. So, looking at the rising number of Chinese companies in Indonesia, one of the biggest concern is, of course, an over reliance from Indonesia's part on China. Do you think that is a valid concern? And if so, what should be done?
Yes, I think it's a valid concern. We are economically increasingly dependent on China, and that has made Indonesia unable to have foreign policy independence or independent foreign policy towards certain issues related to China. One of the example is on the South China Sea issue, where we have been taking a very cautious step in responding to China's aggressiveness in the South China Sea. And then when it comes to the human rights violation taking place in China, such as in the Xinjiang province, we have been very careful in criticizing China. So this shows that our reliance on China has created a situation where we are not able to take a foreign policy decision independently. I think Indonesia, number one, need to be aware that, of course, we need China, we need Chinese investment, but more importantly, because there is a domestic push for Chinese investment from China, whereby Chinese economy has been declining over the past half a years, where they also need this investment to improve their economy. This means that China also needs Indonesia. So by being aware that China also needs Indonesia, we should have a bargaining power in negotiating with China. Chinese investment need to be clean. Chinese investment need to benefit Indonesia. That should be written in our agreement and in our negotiation with China. The second and the last thing that I think Indonesia need to do to reduce their dependency on China is by having more friends, by diversifying their foreign policy, by by having a relationship with not only traditional partners like China, but also non-traditional partners, like for example countries in Africa, in the Middle East, in Latin America. Our foreign policy has been mainly dominated by our traditional friend like China, the US, the ASEAN, but I think we need to diversify that further and further. And by having more and more friends, of course, our dependency on one partner, including China, will be reduced.
All right. Muhammad Zulfikar Rahmat, Director of Indonesia-China Desk at CELIOS Research Agency, thank you so much for sharing with us your time and your expertise. We truly appreciate it.
Thank you.